Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a seriously fascinating forensic physics investigation. We are going to look at a high-stakes legal argument where criminal law crashes head-on into the laws of statistical physics. We're essentially using pure science to genuinely test the boundaries of cause and effect.
I mean, think about it for a second. Can a single drop of water actually cause a massive tsunami? It sounds kind of like a philosophical riddle, right? But this is literally the central paradox of our explainer today. We're looking impartially at a real-world case where a microscopic action by one individual is being legally blamed for macroscopic, widespread chaos. So does that actually hold up to the laws of physics? Well, that's exactly what we're here to find out.
But before we even touch the physics, I want you to lock this number into your mind. 0. In the specific context of the case we're analyzing, 0 represents the number of likes, the number of comments, and the number of secondary forwards on the defendant's social media posts. Absolute 0 engagement. Keep that in your back pocket, because it's going to be absolutely crucial when we bring science into the courtroom.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with the retweet crime, move into the physics of the courtroom, unpack fluctuation and dissipation, then map the network, analyze the critical state, and wrap up with how science defines causality.
Section 1, the retweet crime. Let's impartially look at the source material. The narrative centers around the case of Chen Jingyuan, a PhD researcher. According to the case files, he was arrested and charged simply for forwarding political posts via a VPN on a social media platform.
So let's break down the actual facts presented in the case. The defendant was what network scientists would call an edge node user, meaning he had fewer than 100 followers. And like we just established, there was absolutely 0 engagement on these posts. Yet the legal charge against him was picking quarrels and provoking trouble, with the prosecution claiming these 0 engagement forwards directly caused severe public chaos. Now you're probably seeing the massive contrast here, right? We have a completely microscopic, essentially invisible account on one side, and a claim of macroscopic, severe public chaos on the other. This is the exact puzzle we need to solve.
Section 2, Physics of the Courtroom. This is where we bring in statistical physics as our ultimate, completely impartial expert witness.
You see, we can actually take the prosecution's legal hypothesis and frame it as a rigorous physics problem. The ultimate question becomes, how does a massive system handle a microscopic perturbation? Or, in plain English, how does a massive network with millions of active users physically react to one tiny, isolated signal? Well, science has a very definitive mathematical answer for us. Section 3, Fluctuation and Dissipation. Now, what's really interesting about this is that it forms the absolute academic baseline for our entire investigation today. We're talking about the Fluctuation-Dissipation theorem, or FDT for short. It's a foundational theorem in statistical physics. FDT proves that a system's response to an external perturbation is entirely determined by its own internal structure. To put it simply, a system's temper and its macro response are determined by its own baseline state, not by the outside force that pushed it.
And I mean, we're talking about heavyweights like Albert Einstein and Herbert Colin who helped establish this. The classic analogy here is a tiny speck of pollen floating in water, getting knocked around by water molecules, what we call Brownian motion. If you gently push that pollen, the resistance it feels, the dissipation, is fundamentally linked to the exact same water molecules causing its random fluctuations. The response is built into the water itself, not your little push.
Section 4, Mapping the Network. And this brilliantly illustrates how we pivot from pure physics right into the digital world.
The source material applies this exact physics theorem directly to social media dynamics, and the one-to-one parallel is honestly incredible. It's like a giant puzzle. The physical particles are the users. The thermal noise is the daily churning flow of information on the internet. The fluctuation maps perfectly to public opinion volatility. The external force, that tiny push, is the retweet behavior, and the system's response is the macroscopic spread. The math maps out perfectly. The internet is literally acting as a physical system here.
So, on one side, you have the prosecution's linear logic, arguing that the retweet directly caused severe social chaos. But then, you have the strict mathematical boundaries of the FDT model telling a remarkably different story. In physics, the macro result equals the external perturbation multiplied by the system response function. It's that simple. If the perturbation is near 0 and the system is stable, the result must be near 0. You simply cannot bypass the system's own internal math.
Let's move on and see how this builds in a normal network. Here's how natural dissipation actually absorbs tiny inputs. Step 1, the user retweets. Step 2, because it's an edge node, followers completely ignore it. Step 3, the platform's algorithm automatically deprioritizes the unengaged content. And finally, the signal decays completely to zero. Just like heat dissipating in a massive ocean, the network effortlessly swallows that tiny fluctuation. It never even reaches the broader public.
Section 5. The critical state. This brings us to a major logical fork in the road. If the network swallowed the retweet, but a massive response, this severe public chaos, truly did happen, what does physics say about the state of the network at that exact moment? Well, physics tells us that for a massive reaction to occur from such a tiny push, the network absolutely had to be in a volatile critical state. The symptoms of this are clear. The system response function approaches infinity, you have high systemic instability, existing structural tension, and maybe even algorithmic amplification or supernode intervention. Basically, if chaos occurred, the system was already a powder keg. The retweet was just background noise that happened to be there at the time.
To put that into perspective, the statistical absurdity of the prosecution's claim is massive. Look at this breakdown. The defendant's retweet represents less than 0.001% of the energy. Meanwhile, the daily network background noise is over 99.999%. Blaming macro chaos on this statistically invisible signal is literally like blaming a massive ocean tsunami on a single drop of rain. It completely ignores the vast churning ocean already in motion.
Section 6. Science defines causality. So the crucial point is, what does all this math and physics actually mean for real-world cause and effect? It means that science sets a hard, strict boundary on cause and effect, one that simply cannot be bypassed by subjective legal claims. FDT proves, definitively, that a microfluctuation cannot create macro chaos without a system that is already unstable. The physics effectively breaks the causal link the prosecution is trying to build. You can't logically blame the spark if the room was already filled to the brim with gasoline, right?
Tracing the timeline really cements this whole thing. At 0 seconds, the micro-perturbation occurs. By hour 1, it hits system dissipation. The algorithms and lack of engagement smother it. Fast forward to 24 hours, and we see full energy absorption by the network. By 48 hours, an absolute return to equilibrium. Because the network completely dissipated the retweet, any subsequent macro chaos was a phase change coming from within the system itself, not caused by the defendant.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If a macro system is already poised for an avalanche, who is really on trial here? The falling snowflake or the mountain? Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer. It's such a perfect example of why applying complex system science to our everyday structures helps us uncover the true nature of cause and effect. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.